Hi guys, my name is Dante, and welcome back to Overpaint. So before we move on to our main submission of the day, let's check out this artwork real quick and do some analysis and maybe give some tips to Jackal Zone. And they are quite pretty stylized artwork of a forsaken old robot, something like that I believe. Looks very sentimental, I like it. Hey, ever since I started watching your videos, I've been trying more stuff like this drawing. I'm still a pretty big fan of line art, but I mostly want to know if there is much I can do after finishing a drawing that would actually improve the quality. Details aren't something I'm good at, and I mostly use Sai, but this little robot turned out better than I was hoping it would for a doodle. If you want to overpaint it, that would be cool, or just give tips in general. I'm just looking to learn. So yeah, I decided let's just go ahead and do some tips on this one, because generally, like, this is the kind of artwork that I feel like I wouldn't make it better if I would, like, completely re-render it. So yeah, I really like the way character looks like. I like the composition, although maybe I would move the character a bit to the left, like maybe this way it would look better, you know, following the rule of thirds. And that way the leaf as well, this leaf is kind of an important sentimental element of the composition. I would also put it at the third, so something around here. That's just composition wise, I think it would look a bit better this way. There, I kind of feel like we're much more here, you know, with this robot right now than we were right here. Like, it feels like the camera is panning to see the robot at its proper position, but we're not there yet. Like, it's a screenshot from the animation. So I think this pose kind of captures a better moment. And in here, like, too much attention to this empty area. Like, this doesn't bring any story content or emotional content to the picture, and it takes up too much space, it's too close to the center, and really a huge portion of the composition is dedicated to just an empty tree. So this way I think it works better. Always important to pay more attention to the composition, because even a simple, like the simplest drawing, put properly on a canvas with enough space from the top, bottom, left, and right, already looks like something that deserves attention, you know, it turns into an actual piece. And another thing I would do here right away is fixing the value of this leaf. It looks really bright. The first time I was looking at the original, I spent like a couple of minutes before I even noticed the leaf. Even though it's like an important part of the picture, it's like so invisible because its value is too close to the value of the sky. It wouldn't be even physically correct, but obviously we don't care about that in this kind of art style, but it's aesthetically incorrect. Like, sky should be brighter than just a leaf. Generally, this is the way we're used to see leaves on the sky background, so let's just go ahead and make it darker, and I just want to make it a bit warmer too, to compensate the darkness. So at least this kind of value, obviously I'm using my messy brushes and everything, but this is not the point. You can draw it the way you want, it's just the point is that the main color of the leaf should be, this looks like a bell pepper now, that this way we kind of see it better. And maybe, just maybe, add just a few more leaves, maybe smaller ones here. I would put another one right here, and I can see some of the leaves are laying on the ground, so maybe another leaf that is like adding the motion of the fall. So I'm doing like this kind of motion with them. Maybe even add another one right here, like literally obviously showing this dynamics of the falling leaves. And that's one thing, if you want to do it this way, if the whole point was to have just one last leaf falling down, which very much may be the case, in that case I would probably make this leaf just a bit bigger, so it would feel like something that is content in itself, like fully standalone part of the composition, you know, a little bit bigger, it would look probably better, I think. So there's that, and another thing, I really like the style of the strokes, and their combinations of colors are just so nice. I love looking at this. But one thing that is bothering me is the way the clouds are painted. Apparently there was some kind of like a cloud brush used or something that kind of looks like a cloud in its strokes. I don't think this is a very good idea to do that, just because it breaks from the overall style. So I would actually use the brush that looks just like the rest of the brushes, like something like this with sharp edge of the stroke. Only let's make it blending. So yeah, just with something like this, using big strokes, you could make these clouds look just like clouds that fit much better into this world of sharp strokes like this. And it would make like a much stronger dynamics. You see how it's going this way, you can easily show the flow of the strokes, which is really good for this picture, I think. So yeah, that's about the clouds, and continuing the idea of the brushwork, I'm not sure, it feels like this picture suffered from export quality settings or something. I'm not sure what's with the strong aliasing of the edges of the strokes. Like, we see really strong steps on the edges of the strokes, which is... The thing is that this picture looks really close to something that you may be doing for, you know, like a magazine design, like a background for some kind of article or something like that. It looks like that kind of illustration, but it lacks a little bit of polishing in the sense of just consistent quality of the strokes, and also just the good quality. If in Sai you have a brush that has this kind of pixelated sharp edge, that's not good. Like, choose different settings or choose a different brush that doesn't have that. Make sure that your brush stroke has smooth anti-aliased edges so it would have the production quality. And pretty much doing those fixes and thinking about more maybe on the values generally. Maybe I would make like the bottom third of the grass a bit darker somehow, like, to think about it. Like, I can't tell for sure at the moment, that would require quite some search. But generally, if I feel like if this would be darker, it would have like a better spot in this third right here as a main composition spot. It would just work a bit better. So making these little adjustments to the composition, to the brushwork, you will get like a production level illustration that's like a stylized kind of illustration. I think it's a really cool thing to do, like for a living, illustration like that. The main thing I love here is the colors. It's really like, this is just so lovely to look at. These colors are amazing. So yeah, these are the main little things I think are a good idea to fix to bring your artwork a bit closer to production level. And now let's move on to our main patient of the day, Emimo. Hi Emimo. Hey Dante, I found your YouTube channel a couple of months ago, and I think I've learned very much from you during this time. I've stuck with line arts for a very long time, and while I love drawing lines and color with hard shadows, I also want to get into painting more. Watching you paint has given me a big boost towards it, and so I also decided to submit this picture for you to overpaint. The character is my own creation named Varlam Starikovic, leading his men into a big fight. I'm eager to see what I could improve. Oh yes, let's do that. I like the dynamic, flamey kind of gamma of this picture. So let's start with the composition. I really like the proportions of the screen. This really feels like a shot from an action movie. I think this was the inspiration generally. This is like a screenshot from the alternative 300 movie or something like that. Really has like a close to that kind of gamma and everything. But one thing I would fix is I would move this sword thing that you guys may have not even noticed yet. This is the main dialogue in here. Our main Starikovic guy is killing someone very brutally with all the blood and everything, and the enemy is being defeated over there. I feel like we need to see their arm, kind of like holding the sword but already failing to use it and pretty much waiting to be killed, maybe at the top of the head even. And we'll highlight the silhouette of them by adding a bit more of that dust, like smoke maybe. There's a battle in the back, so there can be all kinds of smoke in our favor. Yeah, only much bigger. This guy is supposed to be in front of him, not to the left from him. And right away we have an overlapping detail. The sword is in front of the leg of the Starikovic, so we'll make the leg going away into the air perspective to have a strong and very well readable silhouette. And I'm working through the whole background, ground after ground, making it brighter to not lose all of the silhouettes right away as I'm fixing all of this. So I'm making this part brighter, and further away will be even brighter to have a better understanding of how big that landscape is. And we have a much more interesting layers of ground going on right away. And yeah, improving the silhouette of our defeated enemy right here as well. So we'll work through this better. Maybe not a purely black shadowy silhouette of the enemy will do as well, like we'll add some lighting on them. Not sure yet, that's not necessary. So yeah, I think it feels much better right away. This landscape with more of a complex geometry of the ground looks much more interesting. Another thing is what I want to fix. We feel like the murder of the enemy is happening here in front of us. Then there's a lot of empty space, and far in the distance there's actual battle going on. Like, we miss the transition of the action. There's someone missing right here fighting. So what I want to do is I want to add, like, maybe a couple of silhouettes of actual people being closer fighting. I know this feels like a lot more work, we're adding a lot more characters, but they don't have to be well detailed at all, because this is not line art. We can lose all kinds of edges if we want to, and we do. So there's another guy standing right here with the sword. There's someone else right here, just a head appearing, because everything else is not gonna make sense in this tiny spot, just standing right here like this. I don't know, with a antenna on his helmet or something. This is probably not that kind of style of the warrior that would fit here, but whatever. Maybe someone else is gonna be right here probably, and we'll highlight them up a little bit. We'll work through their shape as well. See, like, we're adding actual people around, and it already feels like the actual sea of battle that we're in. And of course, a lot more smaller people fighting everywhere the way it was in the original. But again, we don't have to be struggling a lot with the actual details or anything. Pretty much almost just spots will work. I mean, like, to build this, of course, afterwards we can add some details. Some kind of vehicles or maybe horses. I don't know what kind of universe we're in. This guy feels very undefined in that. And the enemy is almost like releasing his sword, overtaken by his fear. So that's for the composition. Another thing that I would fix, I already started fixing it, I made this leg longer. The limbs of the main guy are really short, like his head is really big right here. I understand there was probably like foreshortening, like this shoulder area feels like it was planned to be foreshortened, but thing is, anatomy doesn't work that way. You can't bend this thing so strongly that you would have actual foreshortening, like it would feel a bit too much. So I would probably do it a bit differently. I would just go ahead and bend the hand a bit like this. And have like a stronger silhouette of the executioner. This elbow also feels like it could use some more of a spreading, you know, to have the counterweight of the action. If someone's making or planning to make the next second a strong punch, a strong hit with a sword, the counterweight of the other arm should work in the opposite direction. That looks like it's like he actually means it. So adding a bit of a like a stronger angle right here. I'm not sure exactly, is this some kind of fantasy like glove or probably glove? He has some kind of special kinds of gloves. So yeah, I'll add some air perspective on the back of his coat to highlight the silhouette of this hand right here. Also, another thing is like the tip of the coat right here obviously was like squished into the edge of the picture and it's noticeable. It feels like it shouldn't really be here, like it wouldn't naturally go in this area. It'll probably go somewhere around there and it's fine. We better have a bit more space for this guy with the sword. Another guy right there to create a mess, and I'm just adding a little spot of the head and the shoulders. That's it, nothing else is gonna be visible anyway. Someone's dead over there. And also, I think we should add a little bit of like an aura around the main character. This is something that feels like a weird artistic trick to do, but the point of it is that the brightness of this dusk or dawn, whatever is going on in the back, is much brighter than what colors of a picture can show. And by adding this highlight right here, first of all, we're kind of like highlighting the dust that is being picked up everywhere from the action and is being lit around the silhouette of our Starikovich. But also, this is the effect that tells us that the thing in the back is much brighter than the thing in the front. That's why we see a much stronger contrast next to the edges, like a local contrast. Swords don't usually spread the highlight all over their blade, because in that case they feel like they're not that sharp, they're like old and rusty, they're dirty, and that's why they're spreading the highlight all over the place. We'll maybe add just one tasteful highlight somewhere, but it's gonna be sharp and bright. Maybe we won't even do that because that's not necessary to show a good sword, you know? On the face, obviously, if the cheek caught so much light, the nose will have that 100% as well. So yeah, if you have noticed, the more changes I make to this picture, the less details it ends up having, and there's a reason to that. When you're painting a dynamic picture, you have to choose. Either you want to have like a highly dynamic lighting, or you want to have a lot of details. Obviously in Hev we have a very strong dynamic lighting with a lot of dark area for the mysterious imagery, and because of that, we can't put a lot of detail on this hair. It's obviously dark hair. If it's so dark right here in the shadowy area, it will be just the black silhouette, and that's cool. Just keep it actually black. Well, black, dark beyond detail. Same with the sword. Like, we should work a lot better on the silhouette. If I blur my vision right now looking at this picture, the sword kind of blends away into the background. I can't see the sharp, violent silhouette of a man with a sword who's about to kill someone, you know? So you need to keep it sharp so people would see it well. Like, this should be the first thing you look at. So yeah, these are the thoughts at the moment. Let's go ahead and render through the whole thing, and we'll see if I have something else to say, but I think these are the main things to do with this painting at the moment. Let's put a bit more thoughts into all of this for a little while, and yeah, let's start. Alright, done. So yeah, I think I did everything I would like to do here. So comparing to the previous stage, I did this. I made the hair a lot darker because it really did not have enough lighting going on in this dynamic lighting situation to be any brighter than this. So I pretty much removed all the light from here because this is almost as bright as the skin, and obviously the hair is a lot darker on this character when we compare it right here. So this was like a mistake of values when you start lighting up the dark object brighter to show all the details on it, and it stops being dark. So make sure you maintain the value of a dark object to keep it dark. I did add just a little bit of maybe translucent hairs right here to show some of the color of the hair, and a little highlight on the new light that I added. As we can see on the character, we have like a fire lighting going on from the right side, having this black shadowy area going on right here everywhere, and on the left side from this Terminator there's this warm light from the dusk, and on the right there's fire. I bent this arm a bit lower so it would look a bit better. This way it felt a bit too casual. It feels like it should be a bit more, like the hands should be more spread, so I did that. Obviously added a fire right here, just thought it would be a great place having a silhouette of the warrior behind the fire with all these particles, and I pretty much replaced almost every particle of the fire here in the composition. These original ones, they were really non-dynamic, like slowly moving. They felt more like a romantic kind of particle and not a dynamic action kind of particle. So I made them with really fast strokes just like this to make them look like they're like motion blurred. They're in a high speed moving to the right in this case. Oh no, wait, to the left, because the rain is falling to the left as well. So yeah, whatever, let's say this is to the left. It actually makes more sense because fire particles are lighter than air, they're moving upwards, and obviously upwards would be in this direction and not the opposite. Let's actually fix just a few of these to bring a better idea on that. There's also fire going on behind that unidentified character and in there, so there's like a lot of fire and mass going on everywhere, a lot of swords sticking out from the silhouettes, so we can actually see that this is a fight. What else? I added some darker gradient on the top of the sky to make it look more dynamic and ominous. Some details on the clouds right here to not have just an empty blank aura that I was talking about. Adding something, yeah, a sharp highlight on the sword looking like this now instead of this, like it has too much waves going on. It feels like the sword is not straight, like it's bent. This way it feels like a sharp, dangerous weapon. Added a bunch of details on this arm to make it look like there's actually some kind of armor going on them, but didn't pay any attention to it, just some spots, you know, just so it wouldn't have just this basic stick. This is a bit more complex. The arm, I decided to push the elbow a bit backwards, a little bit closer to the original, not as much, although we actually could. As I thought about it, in the original, it would work if it would have wrinkles of the cloth following this kind of geometry to show the actual foreshortening. This is the thing you really have to do. You have to show that it's actually rotated backwards away from the camera. In that case, this kind of foreshortening would work. I think anatomically you can make the hand like this, although, yeah, you pretty much can, right? I kind of misjudged the possibilities of a human being. Generally, it would be possible, but these wrinkles, they really feel like it's actually a really short arm right here, not facing backwards but like this. That's a confusing part, and maybe it felt a bit more dynamic when I moved the elbows to the sides like this. Felt more like he was dancing a little bit, so I repositioned it a little bit to feel it more like when this arm is lower, it reads a bit better. It's all about the language of the pose. Maybe I didn't do the best pose here. Yeah, I guess this is it. One last thing, I redrew most of the raindrops with the color of the dusk, because as we established in the previous episode of Overpaint, water is transparent, so it has a color of the main ambience of the picture. In this case, especially around the spot where we have this bright dusk going on, we have a lot of refraction, like a distortion, reflecting or refracting. Both things together, they just show up with a quick line of that color that is behind it, so it makes sense. Like further away, it could have a colder color, but I think if I would paint it from scratch, I would just use the soft color of the brightest light source, which is the warm sun. Yeah, and finally, I did some cool brushwork on this flag in the back. One thing to make sure, yeah, this is something I was going to talk about. The main thing about this picture, we have a really dynamic lighting, but obviously Inimo was trying to render every single detail. Even the characters way in the back have like light and shadow on them, which is a very not rewarding thing to do. Don't do that with this kind of lighting when there's most things are definitely gonna be just a shadow with barely any lighting. That means when there's a lot of overlapping things, we pretty much just work with the silhouettes and pay attention to which object is further away than the other one, and we just make them lighter. Like this color is lighter than this color is lighter than this color. Like a game of shadows going on. Like we just see different flat silhouettes pretty much that are like diving into the depth of the picture with the semi-transparent strokes that are like blend into the whole thing, but not everywhere. Sometimes we visualize them with a sharper edge somewhere, you know, but generally all the objects in the picture will be just silhouettes, no light and shadow. This is really important. When you have a really dark picture with a lot of just air perspective, you start playing instead of light and shadow with just silhouettes and air perspective. You have to make sure you make this decision whenever it feels like, okay, I need to visualize this object with light and shadow, but it just doesn't work. Like, I want to have a lot of brightness difference on this jacket, but it gets to the point when it's almost as bright as the sun behind it, which makes no sense. That means give it up, like make it a flat, sharp silhouette that will show up well on the character, instead of doing this right here that makes no sense, this lighting up of the edge of the character. We just make a cool statement out of his sharp silhouette with the bright light behind it, highlighting him from the background. It looks cooler when you search for these silhouettes. If the character is really dark somewhere and the background is bright, just keep the character actually black and define the details of him with just some air perspective, and mostly with just defining his actual shape, the silhouette, with the contrast of the background. This is how I did it in here as well. You see, I didn't add like the lighting on this edge of the jacket like this because it wouldn't make sense. It's not as bright as whatever is going on in the back. That's why I added just a little bit of air perspective right here, this color, to show up that we have like this geometry going on, and then it's like going away like this. So it's going in the back. You see this right now, but I didn't actually specify, I didn't make strokes of all of these details. All I defined is that this silhouette right here keeps happening, and there is some air perspective going on in the back side of this jacket, and then it just goes away, like smooths out, because there's like this edge disappears right here. We start seeing like a smooth gradation of the surface, and that's the way you work with the most details in this kind of composition. When you have so much dust, so much just really dark objects, really dark lit characters everywhere, there's so much dust from the action and from the fire and smoke and everything, and there's just a lot of people that are just gonna show up as silhouettes on top of the much brighter background of this landscape. So yeah, that's the main thing. Play around with the trick of switching from rendering light and shadow, the way we have on the face, to rendering just silhouettes and air perspective, the way we have on the jacket. Because there would be no sense to do this, there's not a lot of brightness in there. Not everywhere you can stretch the brightness far enough to have actual light and shadow on the object, especially if it's a dark jacket in the darkly lit situation. It's gonna be just a silhouette. Keep it as a silhouette. Not a technical silhouette, obviously. There's no sharp silhouette in the pictures. You can see they're all just smooth strokes blending back and forth into the background, but that's a different scale of the problem. And here we're talking about generally the whole silhouette of the character. So yeah, still not exactly happy with the way I changed the pose of the elbow. Maybe it would be better to keep it the way it is right here, but still it feels a little bit in this scenario that the head is too big or the limbs are too short. I really loved painting this. I think this part of the composition, I did a really cool thing right here. It felt like a cool experiment to do. Fire reflection on the face and the dark with the fiery highlight on the eye makes Starikovic look a lot more savage, you know, like he's actually going berserk. So yeah, this is it. Tell me guys what you think about the results. Tell me if you need more talk on how to switch from the light and shadow rendering to the silhouette and air perspective rendering to have this better work with the darker areas where there's just not enough exposure of light to have all the details show up with light and shadow. This way you really are able to preserve the real contrast of values of overall the world, you know? If something is in the dark, it should be much darker than something that's in the light. So you have to make things like drown in darkness sometimes. That's something you have to do in the paintings. If you want your artwork to be overpainted like this, the link to my Patreon page is in the end of this video, but keep in mind that the queue of the submissions is still pretty big. We're working on it right now with this overpaint month. So yeah, if you really want to, you can submit, and I thank you for watching. If you did, I guess you did. If you're here, leave a like and subscribe, tell a friend. Keep on dreaming. Do whatever you want, and I will see you in the next one. Bye! Okay, the new version reminds me of some actor, and I'm gonna die not knowing who.